President Trump's slew of executive orders over the last month have left many, particularly among Liberals, expressing real anxiety over where the US is headed. Stephen Levitsky, Professor of Government at Harvard University and Senior Fellow for Democracy at the Council on Foreign Relations, writes in his article, The Path to American Authoritarianism, that, quote, democracy is in greater peril today than at any time in modern US history.
Between 2014 and 2021, the annual Global Freedom Index of the Freedom House downgraded the United States from 92 to 83.
Levitsky writes, quote, democracy survived Trump's first term because he had no experience, plan, or team. He did not control the Republican Party when he took office in 2017, and most Republican leaders were still committed to democratic rules of the game. Trump governed with establishment Republicans and technocrats, and they largely constrained him. None of those things are true anymore. To share his thoughts on the subject is Stephen Levitsky himself. Welcome to Rising.
Good morning.
Good morning. So in your piece, which is pretty lengthy and pretty in-depth, I was very interested in one point you make, which is that you're not arguing that there's just, this is a binary situation where there's democracy and complete totalitarianism as opposite options or as the only two options. You talk about your worry being that the second Trump term will create a situation that you call competitive authoritarianism. Maybe you could just explain what that means and why you think the US is in danger of it.
Sure. Since the end of the Cold War, so now really for more than a generation, many regimes in the world have been hybrids of democracy and authoritarianism. The value that the preeminence of elections in the world today is such that it's really difficult to completely eliminate electoral politics and govern, say, with the military or single party. So this is not a new thing, competitive authoritarianism. Competitive authoritarian regimes are regimes that are electoral, in which their opposition is legal and above board. There's electoral competition, but in which incumbent abuse of the machinery of government, weaponization of the state and its deployment against rivals to buy off and punish critical media, to co-opt or to punish opposition politicians, activists, business. That sort of abuse of power, abuse of the state, tilts the playing field against opposition. This is contemporary Turkey, contemporary Hungary, Venezuela under Hugo Chavez. It's subsequently descended into full-scale dictatorship. A number of regimes in the world. And it looks to me like the United States, although I never would have imagined this even a handful of years ago, it looks to me like the United States is on the brink of sliding into precisely that.
I mean, if your fears about the authoritarianism stem from maybe the system being less competitive in terms of electoral politics, that to me, respectfully, I mean, we've had the last 3 elections now were lost by the incumbent. We have just such thermostatic opinion and changeover and remarkably competitive presidential elections. Trump won the popular vote, but won it pretty narrowly. I think it's maybe it's hard to imagine a competitive Democratic Party right at this second in time. I don't think it'll be hard to imagine a competitive Democratic Party a year or two from now. Is there really a danger that Trump's, he's very popular at this moment, more popular than he's been in years, that he consolidates his power in some way to make it such that the electoral system is no longer competitive?
No, that is precisely why it's called competitive authoritarianism and not non-competitive authoritarianism. The thing about competitive authoritarian regimes is that competition is real. It's serious. Opposition parties sometimes even win. Think about Poland in 2023. That was a competitive authoritarian regime in which the opposition managed to win. So no, it is very, this is why we make a distinction between good old-fashioned dictatorship where competition is eliminated and competitive authoritarianism, where there is a competitive struggle for power. That's unlikely to go away in the United States. But that's not to say, just because the elections are competitive, just because the Democrats stand a a pretty good shot of winning the midterm elections in 2026 and could win the presidency in 2028. That doesn't mean that there can't be an enormous abuse and violation of power, violation of civil liberties, and weaponization of the state in ways that make competition unfair, even if it continues to be serious.
And of course, to that point, it's not only about political competition in the sense of an incumbent party and an opposition party. I mean, you talk about the idea where within this sort of competitive authoritarianism framework, leaders will often raise the price, raise the penalty for dissenting against the dominant party, and that penalty is raised for journalists who may, have their tax affairs investigated or pretty flimsy charges placed against them, or for, particularly in the business world, corporate leaders who, of course, generally speaking, own media corporations as well, being subject to either losing contracts or adverse action of some kind. So those are the kind of actions that I assume worry you as Trump begins this second term.
Absolutely. And that's what we need to watch for, because when that becomes widespread, systematic, when the parent companies of major media have to take into account how the government may respond to them when they make certain decisions, when people who say contribute money to the Democratic Party have to worry that may increase the likelihood of a tax audit, when critics to the government or opposition politicians have to worry that if they take X or Y position, they may face death threats or harassment that doesn't get prosecuted by this Justice Department, or they may in fact be investigated by the Justice Department. When our behavior begins to change because we are worried about some form of punitive action by the government, that's authoritarianism. And I would point to New York City today as maybe the leading case in the last month. Mayor Adams was elected by the voters in New York City, and it's now not clear that he's responsive to voters in New York City because a weaponized state was wielded in an openly quid pro quo manner to buy his cooperation with government policy. That's authoritarian behavior.
So I'm, the right of center commentator on this show, but I agree with almost everything you just said. I agree with you on the Mayor Eric Adams situation. I don't think the government should harass or intimidate or take negative actions toward media companies. I'll criticize Trump when he does that. I've criticized his recent actions with respect to the Associated Press. But, you said someone, facing political pressure from the government for making, for instance, a donation to the Democratic Party. I mean, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, got a I thought, pretty intimidating letter from Elizabeth Warren because he gave his personal money. He made a donation to Trump's inaugural committee. And Democratic lawmakers have written letters, intimidating letters to cable company CEOs for carrying Newsmax and Fox News and things like that. Obviously, Biden bullied, I would say. You might disagree with that characterization, but I thought bullied social media companies over their moderation policies throughout his presidency on COVID and a bunch of other things. So is this really, I would say there's a competitive authoritarianism in that there's a lot of authoritarianism on both sides of the political spectrum, but maybe you could respond to concerns people like me would have about this taking place by Democrats too.
Please give me a break. First of all, it would be very inaccurate. It would be ridiculous to suggest that no Democratic Party politician has ever engaged in behavior that is also at odds with democratic norms. And there are incidents under both the Obama administration and the Biden administration. But Democratic senators sending even somewhat harassing letters when they don't have the kind of power of enforcement that control over, say, the IRS says, is not in the same league. I mean, it's completely fine as the center-right commentator to point out that there are Democrats who have done things that merit criticism, and they do merit criticism. But to paint to somehow justify perhaps the Trump administration's authoritarianism because both sides do it, is a whitewash of the Trump administration's behavior. Every major democracy index in the world, every major democracy organization in the world, whether it's the Freedom House or Varieties of Democracy or Polity, has shown or has argued that the Trump administration's behavior is far, well and beyond anything seen under previous Democratic administrations. These are not comparable parties. The Republican Party, I'm sorry to say it, because a democracy requires that both parties play by democratic rules, but the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party, has ceased playing by democratic rules of the game. It nominated for president and supported unanimously somebody who attempted to overturn the results of an election and block a peaceful transfer of power. The Democrats haven't done that.
Stephen Levitsky of Harvard. No disguising the fact that one of us is more sympathetic to your views than the other, but that's what we like here on Rising. It's been a good conversation, and we appreciate you joining us.
Take care.
Now, New York City Mayor Adams has, as our previous guest just mentioned, become the center of the political and prosecutorial universe. Find out why next on Rising.